Yeah.
Tell about when you asked your father one day if the family was rich.
So I had no concept of money when I was in like 7th grade. And somebody in my classroom said to me, man, you guys really must be rich. Your dad picks you up from school, your mom doesn't work. And I was like, wow. They said something like you have nice clothes or something. There was something they said that made me think, that made them think we were wealthy. And I was thinking to myself, oh, yeah, maybe we are rich. And so I get home and I said to my dad, I said, hey, Dad, are we rich? And he said, and this was another thing about my dad that was really cool. He never made a reaction to anything I asked him. And he said, okay, well, I'll tell you this, we're not rich. And this was early in the week. He said, on Friday, I'll show you how rich we are. And I was like, great. So Friday rolls around, he gets his paycheck, right? And my dad worked for the city of Chicago, so he, didn't make a whole lot of money, but he could support his family. Well, instead of depositing it, he cashed it. And he came home and he brought the stub from his paycheck and the cash. He said, this is how much I make. And I looked at it and it, I don't know how, it wasn't $1,000, but it might as well have been. I mean, it was a lot of money. And I was like, we are rich. And he's like, no, wait. He said, first of all, you got to take out your money for your rent. So he spreads all the money out in, 20s, 10s, 5s, and 1s, and whatever the rent was. He's like, all right, count the rent out, and I counted it out, put it over there. He said, and I was like, wow, so this is what you have left? He's like, what about car payment? You got to pay for your car. I was like, oh. So he's teaching me these lessons about bill paying and everything at the same time. I was like, you have to pay for your car every month, he said, until it's paid off. So I took the money out for that. And then he said, what else? And I said, groceries. He's like, yep. I took all the money out. And it got to a point where he was left with like $40. And he said, now, you have to save some money for yourself. So you put half of that in the bank. And he puts it in the bank, and it's $20. And he said, that's what's left over. So that was his way. He did two things. He showed me we weren't rich, which was a good thing. But he showed me the value of actual money and paying bills and saving. It was something that has again, it stayed with me all these years and is sort of part of my makeup.
What do you think you most learned from your parents?
Oh my goodness, there's so many things. I don't know what would be the most. The most is unconditional love for your kids. That's big. I look at my sister and I look at myself and all the things that we've done. You wouldn't be able to do it without the loving support of your parents. My parents always made us feel like we were the most important things in their lives, and yet didn't make us be achievers. They never said you got to get straight A's. And I remember this because I used to be trying to figure out, what's the lowest grades I can get and still exist in this family? And my dad would always say, listen, if you're going to be a ditch digger, just be the best ditch digger. Just work hard. If you work hard and you get a B or a C, I'm not going to say anything. But if you're just slacking off and you get a B, that's bad. It's bad if you get an A. So you should always work hard. And so that unconditional love, and then 1A would be hard work.
We were talking about college a little bit earlier. You get 2 D1 scholarships, and you also get accepted to Princeton if you wanted to go there. They'd give you some money, but your parents would still have to pay somewhere in the neighborhood of $3,000 to $3,500 a year. Explain the conversation that you had with your father where you guys were analyzing the different options.
Yeah, so I was recruited by the University of Washington, Texas Arlington, and Princeton University. And it got to the time where you sort of have your family sit down to talk about what your decision was. So we're sitting at the kitchen table, And so my dad said, well, what you thinking? And I said, well, I've looked at everything, and based on my analysis, I think I want to go to the University of Washington. And no offense to the University of Washington, but my dad did what my dad does when he's not pleased with a decision or something. So he pulls one of these, he goes, and then he puts his chin down and he rubs it like this. He used to do it. And then I'm thinking to myself, what have I done wrong? I mean, I thought I had narrowed it down to 3 really good choices. And he said, well, tell me how you got to your decision. I said, well, they're in the Pac-8. I think by the time I'm a junior, I can play. And, but most of all, they're giving me a full ride. We don't have to pay for anything. And like you said, Princeton was going to be about $3,000, which might as well have been $1 million to me. I mean, $3,000, that just sounds like a lot of money. So he says, well, if you pick your school based on how much we have to pay, I'd be very disappointed. And my dad would be that kind of guy. If he was disappointed, the whole house was disappointed. I mean, you'd be in tears if he said, I was disappointed in you. And that's the sort of carrot he had on me and my sister. And I'm like, he's disappointed. And he said, but you should think about it overnight, and then we'll talk again tomorrow. That's how he played it. So I thought about it, and the next day rolls around, and he said, so did you get a chance to think about what we were talking about last night? And I said, yeah. And I said, actually, I really wanted to go to Princeton. I thought it would be the best place, great education, but I really did think we couldn't afford $3,000. He was like, fine, you're going, just like that. He wouldn't even let us discuss it. And that's how I ended up going to Princeton. Changed my life.
What did you later learn about how your parents afforded not only for you to go to Princeton, but then your sister ultimately ended up going there a couple of years later as well?
Well, I find out once my dad died, and we're going through his papers, and my mom is telling us about what we should know about his affairs. She was like, oh, man, here are those credit cards. And I was like, boy, I'm glad we finally paid these off. And I'm like, what do you mean paid them off? What are you doing with credit card debt? Because they weren't a credit card type family. I mean, they never bought stuff that they couldn't pay for at the end of the month. She's like, oh, yeah, this is from you guys' school tuition. I was like, what? She's like, yeah, oh, you didn't know that? Yeah, that's how we paid for your school. We put it on credit cards. I was like, Mom, the interest on that money. She's like, yeah, it was a lot. And it was like, no, she didn't skip a beat. Yeah, but it was what we had to do. It was like an investment. And that, I mean, my heart didn't sink. I just had yet another reason to be just in awe of my parents. And, the lesson, I know it sounds like everything happens to me, I get a lesson out of it, but the lesson from that is they sacrificed for their kids' education.